Yeah, look at that big cup of coffee.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That's
It's almost as big as my head, only not quite.
like,
I have a basketball head, so there we go.
like Kevin is, like Kevin is. So a couple things that you said there, like looking at your audience, and look, would you take that same premise of looking at the audience, whether it's 500, 5,000, and thinking about them as your closest friend or your
Small
neighbors?
group, small group, small group.
So
It would
would
be
you
more than one person if you're on a stage.
So would
Small
you
group.
take that same thought when you're sitting in front of a camera and doing an interview, or just trying to create a thought, or creating a scissor, when they freeze in front of a camera?
Well, if you're talking to someone who is a speaker and they're
Mm-hmm.
being interviewed, or an author, and or
Mm-hmm.
someone is choosing to sit down and talk to you like this, only
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't be doing this electronically. So if we were having this conversation, you would be sitting on one side or the other.
Right.
It usually wouldn't be a news editorial interview when you would be sitting off camera. But either way, when you're being individually interviewed, one of the things that we don't keep in mind is you should walk into any interview with having three crystal clear points that you want to make during that interview. You don't have to decide where they're going to come because you're not probably in control of the interview. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have 3 points. And that kind of is like that out clause where but that's the beginning when you're being interviewed, so that you always have in your mind where you're going. You know where your journey is headed, yours, because you don't necessarily know where the interviewer is going to take you. So
Right.
that's and what that causes, if we don't have that, Connie, is we tend to sometimes spend time thinking about what we're going to say
Right.
while the interviewer or a panel or someone's asking us a question, which means you're not present.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to, you have to learn how to listen on camera and actually listen, not just look like you're listening, but actually listen, as opposed to thinking about what you're going to say next.
Okay.
When you have that vacant look on your face because you're thinking about what you're going to say next to camera, especially in the interview, we'll pick up on that. So you always have to make sure that you have 3 clear points so that it allows you to relax, again, shoulders, and listen to exactly what they're saying. So those are 2 of my points. Also, in an interview, depends on the situation, of course, but you may have a mic on you,
Mm-hmm.
and people who talk with their hands sometimes tend to bang
Yes.
the lav mic that's on them. That's another thing, because again, I'm a hands guy, so I had to learn to stop going. I'd be telling some story and I would go, and then Billy, and I slapped the microphone, and it's like, okay, that's great. We can't use that because you just
Right.
killed every, there's dogs 4 miles away who are passing out. So mic awareness, very, 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 very much matters.
Well,
For
Michael,
sure.
we also talk about, again, going back to what you wear. We talk about jewelry
Oh boy, yeah.
for for women. I mean, I just did it the other day myself. I did a faux pas. I had long dangly earrings with these on, and I kept thinking, why do I hear, when I did the playback, I did a really good recording, and I hear the playback, and I kept hearing like the dingling and the
Chimes.
chimes.
You were a front porch.
Right. And I'm like, what is that noise? Then I realized I did it myself.
Yeah.
Just things like that, not to wear the dangly earrings. I'm making the noise, or, bangle bracelets, or things like that. So, we have those conversations as well. So,
Oh yeah.
we get down to, every little detail, and again, what you should be wearing and how you should be wearing it. So for going back to the camera. So again, did you have a couple more points on that?
Oh, I have 4 more points.
Oh,
Girlfriend. I got
go
4 more
ahead.
points. I got 4 more. So when being interviewed, again, you don't know what someone's going to ask you. But
Right. Mm-hmm.
in your life, if you're going to be in the public eye in any way, shape, form, or fashion,
Mm-hmm.
just always make sure that you find a way to have 2 or 3. You have to have at least 1, but you have 2 or 3 anecdotal stories
Mm-hmm.
that are short that you can always tell that do relate in some way to your subject, like calling me the communication entrepreneur or calling me the Hollywood redneck. It doesn't really matter. I can tell you funny stories about Hollywood that are short.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you a funny story about growing up in rural Tennessee. And they have to be short, but you have to have something when you're being interviewed that's going to help us know the person a little bit, as opposed to just the subject matter. that some interviewer is trying to get out of you. And to that point, commonly in an interview, somebody may ask you a question that you don't understand, or you're not sure you get where they're going with the question. To me, one of the things, again, and the camera, because we're talking about on camera presence, it's what does the camera see? You cannot answer a question with a question if you're being interviewed. And it's common. We do it in life. We say, well, what do you mean? We say, what do you mean?
Do it.
So one of the things you want to try to practice is you heard what they said. Again, all this builds on itself. Listening, right? You heard what they said. So when you answer the question, and you'll see me do this all the time just with you, Connie, it's like, well, I'm not sure if you're talking about the yellow car or if whether or not you were talking about the tires. But if you're talking about the tires, then the thing in the blonde, whoop-de-doo, is that what you meant? So answer it with some pieces of options of an answer, but then finish it with a question back to them. But you can't just have an interviewer ask you a question and go, huh? Or I don't get that. Add some piece of information to what you think they might mean,
Right.
and then finish it back with, I'm not sure if that's what covered what you needed, but you can clarify that for me. Give something, because otherwise your whole goal in an interview is not to just have them have to cut out a bunch of stuff of what you're doing. And if it's live, you'd like to have them want to have you back. So there is a flow to your on-camera presence that they feel that no matter how the interview went, the audience was never, as we would say in Hollywood, given a reason to change the channel.